morning, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order for the Polk County Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, February 4th. Commissioner Morehorse is excused. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next item up on the agenda is for comments for items that are not on the agenda, limited to 3 minutes. We encourage all community members to engage with public comments to the Board of Commissioners. However, out of respect for our audience and a general sense of decorum, please refrain from vulgar, threatening, or inappropriate language. That new comment has been added because we've had some language that's been getting worse. And threats actually, and demeaning things that have been said to a lot of elected officials and employees. So sorry for that, but you're going to hear that being read into this section every single time from this point forward. Please come forward.
Andy Strauss. Good morning, Andy Strauss, 611 Southeast Rosewood Lane, Dallas, Oregon. I'll say thank you for making that comment. Dallas did the same thing. I appreciate that because when I bring my kids, it's not too fun listening to certain constituents use vulgar language. So I appreciate that. I'm just here. I'll make it really quick and make it easy for both the gentlemen to track, since they have said they have a hard time tracking me. I'm just asking you to please complete the investigation with DPSST that was opened on November 3rd, 2022. It's been open for 2 years, 3 months now. The one prior was only open and closed after 8 months. And the longest open case that you guys have had that you've done did an investigation for was only open for 22 months. So I'm asking that you finish what you need to finish for DPSST on the case opened on a former deputy jester so that our family can have some closure in this. Thank you.
You bet. Any other comments? All right, hearing none. Next up is approval of the agenda.
I move approval.
And I will second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Approval of minutes of January 28th.
I move approval.
And I will second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes. Next up is our Polk County Sheriff's update. Sheriff Carton is with us. And entourage.
Not much of an entourage, only one person.
Yeah.
It's more than a lot of us get, so.
I'm glad he said it's because only one and not much of an entourage.
Oh,
Me.
yeah.
Morning.
Already.
I just wanted to provide a few updates. First, the dog kennel, and
Yeah. Obviously, you know that it was ordered, I think back late fall, we ordered that thing. We originally had like May was arrival date, but we went ahead and got the pad poured and we were in the works. So talking to the company that's building it, they said if we got some things done, they could bump it up. And so it's going to be delivered the week of February 24th, I think. The pad is poured. This week, they're doing trenching to get power out there from building C and then conduit for IS. The excavation company, they're going to trench. BC Electric's going to come in, run the electric out there, and then they'll come back and cover everything up. And luckily, we've had some good weather. It was kind of a mud pit out there around the pad that we poured, but we've recently had some gravel put out there, and we've talked to the company, and they don't need a full runway for the truck. We thought we were going to have to put probably 100 feet of gravel out there, and they said only give us about a 20-foot runway to do that because they can come off of the main parking lot and crank the truck in there and get it set. So we're in good shape there. As far as the water plan, I don't know.
So actually trenching took place yesterday.
Oh, okay.
So that we're already up on that. Water plan is, as I've shared, excuse me, previously is going to be coming off the last spigot that's there. To be able to go into a larger pipe to hold some water, and then there'll be a pump that will actually pump so that there's enough water pressure for the dog pen area.
Okay. Yeah, as far as, size of it, it's 14 by 54, I believe. Enough to hold 12 dogs, which is, hopefully we never get there. But it's a good size. We plan for growth and, the plan is that it's really gonna be no different than how we're operating now. We find a dog, first thing we do is try and find the owner, check for a chip and all that. And then if we can't find the owner, typically Jody works with rescues. But in order for rescues to take the dogs, they have to be vaccinated and all that. So we'll have a place, Jody's gonna work with the vets, and I think Jody can do some of the vaccines. So we'll get the dogs ready to be farmed out to rescues. And at some point, we may just straight adopt because we do a lot of Facebook posting when we find dogs, and a lot of people are like, if you can't find the owner, I'll take it. And so I think it will really expedite our ability to, because the big hurdle right now is the vaccines and all that. Local vet, we started out, we were gonna partner with them and they were on board, and as things moved up the chain of command there, they backed out. And so we're kind of back to square one on that, but Jody's got some good ideas. And so I think it'll be good. We've got a lot of interest from the public wanting to help out and work at the shelter. And I mean, it's not going to be a 24/7 operation. But it's good to know that there's folks out there that are willing to help, whether they come out and clean or feed dogs or whatever. So we'll get moving on that once it gets in place and it gets up and running. So ultimately be a good thing. So we appreciate you guys signing off on that. It's been needed for quite some time, and it's exciting to see it actually happening. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for all your work on it.
Oh, yeah.
And I think when I told my wife what was happening, she asked for Jody's number. Or she called the office and asked for Jody and talked to her. So she'll probably be one of the volunteers, and
Okay,
just
cool.
really appreciate you guys
Yeah.
helping with that. And if you could, we have 2 dogs in our house that are from Marion County bound. Just block my wife from those posts. That'd be great. Two retrievers is the right amount of retrievers.
Well, if she comes out and works, she'll probably have her eyes on the ones that she wants.
First
I expect that.
Last week, we had obviously the murder investigation out kind of south of Independence. I mean, we started out investigating that. And just so everybody knows, this is not something that happens all the time, especially from a crash and having someone deceased already inside the car. We have a major crimes team agreement with all the local police agencies, state police. And so whenever we get a case like this, and especially this one, we were able to make that call out right away. We had the first briefing with all the groups and all the different agencies just 2.5 hours after we kind of made the decision to, okay, we need to get going on this murder case. And so Salem PD, Dallas, Monmouth, Independence, Grand Ron, and OSP all showed up. And the reason we do that is so that we have just a consistent way that we respond to these kinds of things. And it works out, for this case where we go out, we're the initial agency, we're looking at everything. And then it doesn't, the crime didn't occur here, like the crime scene. And so, Salem's already there. And so they're just able to instantly start going off on that. And we were able to give a little bit of help until they can fully do it on their own. And so that major crimes team, it's an agreement we all have. We've made a few updates, and we currently are the coordinator of that group. So it's not always the sheriff's office, but currently it is. So yeah, even at 6:30 in the morning on a traffic crash, when it's just a DUI crash, things can change, and it's not just a normal crash anymore. We've been doing this a long time, and I've never seen that. So it's just one of those things that things never stop to amaze me sometimes. So traffic safety. So I got some information from ODOT, or not ODOT, from OSP. ODOT is trying to put together numbers for me. She also told Commissioner Mordhorst that she really couldn't get the data that we were looking for, which is bizarre. So I had an OSP see if they could pull up some data, and I got it, but it's only through October. And so just a couple of the highlights is, they responded to 355 crashes since January 1 through October, with an average of 72 minutes on per incident. So
How big a response area?
so this is 22 and 99, all the state highways, just
County.
all just Polk County, all state highways. So
That's a lot.
so they are out here. One thing they didn't have is traffic stops. So it just didn't get to me. So I got to that's one piece of information that I'm still looking for, just to see how much activity and not just reactionary stuff that's going on. But with that, Captain Zahner, he wasn't, I don't know if he's still a lieutenant, but he got promoted or will be promoted in the near future. And so he was the Salem area commander. And now he's going to be like the region commander, or captain. So he's coming with me, I think on the 18th. We're meeting with the city of Dallas on a work session with their council. They want to figure out ways that they can help, I guess, too, with the traffic issues on Highway 22 mainly. And so OSP and I are going to go over to that and present more information in terms of actual like current all of 2024 data. So once I get that, I'll be able to share that with all of you. Immigration. So I've had a few questions about, what we do and what we can and can't do. Law enforcement is unique because, we have to enforce state law. We have to abide by the state constitution, the federal constitution. And so when there are things that contradict each other or contradict each other, we have to try to figure out the best avenue going forward without violating Oregon law and without violating federal law and in that middle ground. And so Oregon has had this law on the books for a long time. It's been edited a few times and updated, but I mean, we are legally not able to assist, coordinate, help ICE officials in any way. I mean, that's the way it is. However, on that same token, we can't interfere and can't hinder, can't obstruct federal agencies when they come in. And so finding that middle ground of, not providing information, but also not standing in their way is our role. We're not taking sides. We don't ask immigration status. We're not legally able to ask immigration status. We can't provide, where people work, what schools they attend, what phone number, emails. I mean, they cover almost everything in there that you think of. And so it's just, we've been doing it this way for a long time and it's not changing. We're not changing. So inside the jail, the same rules apply, except for we can ask immigration status if we give them a disclaimer ahead of time that no one answers the questions after the disclaimer gets read, just because it's like, this information could go to ICE and all these things. And so that's the only time we can actually ask those questions. But we typically don't, just because it's not something that we could share anyway. So there are just a lot of, I guess, worries out there about, raids or things. We're not enforcement for immigration. That's just not the way it is. So. Do any of you have any questions? Either of you, I guess, any of you?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I appreciate that you've dug in a little harder on information from OSP. We've had a lot of frustrations, you and I and all the rest of us, about the fact that we get almost nothing from ODOT that's useful. And there's clearly a lot more statistical information that you just got than I've ever heard from ODOT specific to our infrastructure planning. And I think it's critical that we have the real data about crashes, injuries, deaths. And citations, I think, would be very handy to have, or stops, encounters in general. I mean, I try to stop short of saying that we have an epidemic of bad driving and speed, but it's pretty serious. And a lot of folks think that the only way we can solve it is by building, super freeways and super overpasses everywhere to solve the problem, when in fact, a good deal of it could be mitigated if we could just slow people down a little bit, get them off their devices, focus on the actual driving. I mean, every day probably should be a nice day like today. Maybe that would be a good training method, sorry. But it makes us all slow down generally and pay attention. But I do appreciate you getting that. I think that having those numbers in more of our discussions about roadway management and planning is essential in everything that we do. I think it's important. And sadly, we encounter issues where, we try to make improvements, whether it's the county or the state, improvements in roads, and it just leads to more excessive speed. But it has to be done. But, in an effort to help reinforce the things that your team does and other teams do with regard to patrol, it's essential that we keep sharing this information. Here's what we find. Sadly, I don't see any real reporting on causes of crashes or, what may have led to crashes other than potential drunk driving or impaired driving. When in fact, it would be nice if we could continue to share with the public the mechanics of injury and how that happens with high speed. Again, my 27 years in the fire service, I got to see my fair share of the mechanics of injury. And that is generally exacerbated by high speed. It's pretty ugly and it's hard to survive. Even with today's modern cars, it's hard to survive all that. It just feels like we're seeing a lot more of it now, especially on Highway 22. So I support your efforts and communications with the community about what you're seeing and thoughts about how we could fix it. As you guys know, I've been a big proponent of some of these safety zones that we've pushed really hard. I don't know if we have data that is generated that shows it works. Because again, we don't get to hear about, what's the encounters for speed in these safety zones. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever get any of that, but again, mostly that's an OSP issue, right? And we get told that it doesn't work. Yet, where's the data that shows that it doesn't work? Because my instincts tell me and common sense tells me it probably does work. When you're paying $1,000 fine for really high rates of speed, it has to make an impact, I would think, on behaviors. But thank you. We need more. Yeah.
We'll work on that.
And everything you can do to push that pipeline of information back to us from OSB would be so helpful.
Okay. And just to double up on some frustration, when the sheriff of a county asks for this information, it should be readily available. There should be a portal that you can just go into and retrieve data to help inform what you all are doing with traffic enforcement in the ancillary streets.
The Salem area commander has been really good. I mean,
Okay.
with that, I mean, I can text him, call him, and he'll get that. Like, he's the one that got me this info because I tried ODOT first, and I got 2021 data, and
So it's ODOT.
so but yeah, I will keep working on that.
I have another one.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about, we have this new deflection program that we started in September across the state in general, spending a lot of taxpayer dollars on it. I don't mind telling you, and I would tell the public that I share in any places where I speak publicly about how limited we are in actually performing benefits for the community in that program. So we've only had a couple of folks really that have been deflected to a treatment program. And in general, since we lifted the Measure 110 restrictions, I think most of them are customers at the hotel, right? So I'd be interested in knowing your perspective on how we're doing right now with our deflection program, Senate Bill 4002, and what you're seeing on the streets now that you have some opportunities to do a little bit more with possession of controlled substance.
So I heard Jody yesterday say, do you remember, Commissioner, what she said, how many people completed deflection?
I don't know about completed, but I think it's like 8 have been entered, 1 is in.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've completed.
So when we started the program, it was very, very small, targeted, very limited number of people on purpose, because we didn't want to, open and start here and then later fine tune it. And so I know last month we started accepting social referrals. So that is anything that is outside of enforcement action. So the community can do it, law enforcement can do it, and it goes right to the coordinator. Yes, there is no stick per se in that scenario, but it's expanding it a little bit to be able to just get a little bit more people. And then we'll kind of keep going out and really targeting those people.
But let me stop you right there, Sheriff. That expansion, I don't
just giving you
appreciate
background.
this at all. Not that you're presenting that. I don't appreciate the expansion because again, if we're going to follow the law, it was defined. However, it's voluntary, what you just described.
That was correct. Yeah.
Right.
No,
And so to the issue of what the state law said, we were allowed to and required to do, that's not voluntary. I mean, yes, they can choose to take deflection or go to jail,
correct.
right?
Yes.
In the social program,
There is none of that.
There-
Correct.
and so to me, that's an extension of stuff that we're already doing. So it's confusing to
We're
me.
seeing, what we're not seeing is countywide are those folks that are being arrested purely for that PCSU. I've seen just looking at jail numbers where there are PCS crimes with those other charges that would instantly disqualify those people. The other thing that I know, we are going to start expanding the qualifications for that program. I just don't know when that'll occur. And a couple of those things that we've seen that we're like, are we ready to make that change? Is it only Polk County residents that are qualified? Can it be an out of county person that comes back here? Because it's our resources for, should it go to our people? So then we do have several that got referred that are out of the area. So they just instantly come right off the top. But I guess what we're seeing, we're just not seeing a lot of just that single charge of PCS. And I don't know if I don't know the reason for that. If that's lack of training or just experience on terms of the cop out on the street, not having that experience and trying to figure it out, that could be part of it. That's purely anecdotal on my end. But so, I mean, that kind of stuff, we just have to keep teaching and keep looking at ways to make the program more defined and catch more people essentially with the net and not just those single charges of PCS. Because again, most of them have other crimes associated with it, and those have victims typically. The drug crimes don't have victims. And so it's not necessarily, in my point of view, the DA isn't the one that should be making a decision for a victim. The victim should be making that choice. So I don't have any more answers because it is a group that we're dealing with here and in terms of all the agencies that are involved. But I think we are going slow on purpose to try to build that program and not go too fast, too slow, or too quickly. So I don't know if that answers your question, but let's give you some.
Not quite yet. And so again, I just want to make certain that we're all clear-eyed about, we're spending $250,000 of Oregon taxpayer money in this program. It's an 18-month-long program, as I recall. Yes? That's our pilot.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, but yeah.
And so I've been very hawkish on this and saying, I need to see results. Or I can't justify spending $250,000 on a program. Again, right now, we have one client successful, allegedly. And so I'm hopeful that we have true success stories that we can demonstrate. If we're going to continue to ask that the state send this money for this program, that, we're showing successes that's stemming the tide of these PCS encounters. But I'm also clear-eyed with regard to the probable cost for the engagement isn't about PCS in general, correct?
What do you mean?
You're not making stops because you suspected they had drugs in the car, for example. You're not stopping somebody or detaining them in engagement because you suspected that they had controlled substances. There's another criminality involved in most of those engagements. So it is reasonable to expect that there's going to be some elements of criminality that would defray them from this program. That is reasonable. I just want to make certain that as a county, I'm concerned that we stay on track with charging criminals with criminal acts. And if PCS is included in that, then that's a part of it. And be real about, how we're forcing people into these options. Yep, that's $5 right there, bud.
Coffee later.
Yeah.
And you can't turn it off.
Glad that was you, Jeff.
I do agree with you, Commissioner. If the bang is not there for the buck, there's no reason to continue it. I'm totally clear on that after that period of time. It might be something important since they're calling me now.
Yeah.
So I am totally I'm looking at this, is it worth it, taxpayer dollars? Because if it's right as it is right now, if that's where we're at in the end of, to me, that's not.
In conversations with other commissioners, similar sized counties who have started kind of from scratch, right? We have some counties that had diversion programs already established, that it is a slow process. So there's some, and part of it is law enforcement training. Can you imagine being trained in this climate over the last 5 years? You don't know, you may have a officer starting this year whose last year, the laws were completely different with controlled substances. So I think we do need to give it a little time, and hopefully that 2-year period or 18-month is enough to kind of see what's trending. But I'm also curious, in expanding the scope, I think it's great that EMTs could refer people. I think the more referrals, the better. The more knowledge that there is treatment available, better. But like Commissioner Pope said, those other crimes that are associated, I imagine there must be some that are a simple trespass or like maybe aren't real high serious misdemeanors or felonies where there's drugs involved where they could have an opportunity for, some kind of referral. But yeah, it's interesting to see how this will evolve over time. But the goal is for more folks to get into treatment. So that's one of the big measures, and also to give law enforcement the tools to help with that. So if we're not accomplishing that this way, and most people are getting into treatment post, arrest or conviction, as a requirement of their supervision or whatever, then that's maybe the status quo might be what is also most appropriate. Yeah. You guys have an emergency.
Yeah, maybe. He didn't call back.
Yeah.
So, I think the other piece to not forget about is you speak of the money that Polk County has, the 250,000. That's a small sliver of what the state has. And we've seen it before, like with marijuana grants and funding. Some of these counties ask for the moon and they'll take big chunks of the money.
Right.
And if Polk County didn't have that money, somebody else would have that money. And just from experience, like the successes of the bigger counties that have the more money, just because they have more money doesn't mean they push better numbers than we do.
Yeah.
And so, although it is a big chunk of money, I would rather see it be here and give us an opportunity to have a chance to make a difference here than see that money go to Portland or somewhere else and just get lost. So I certainly understand what you're saying. But I think we're in a good position to have that little slice of the pie that we have and keep that money here to try and, do something good for our own community, as opposed to if we don't take that money, somebody else is getting more money than they already have. So,
And we're still going to provide treatment. Regardless of this program of deflection, treatment is still going to be an option for anybody that wants it or required of it.
Yeah.
Maybe we do need to go. So, all right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any unlisted items?
No, sir.
No?
That's a no too.
All right, we're adjourned.
You may be interested, AOC is advancing a bill to increase